And so our presentation tonight is going to be on understanding voting process and deadlines, and making sure your vote is counted. What I'd like to do is introduce our presenters. Tom, if you would introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Tom Howarth. I am the voter protection liaison for the Democratic Party here in Warren County.
Thank you. Ree?
Hi, I'm Rea Howarth, and I am just checking to see if you can hear me all right.
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to let you know I'm on the Communications Committee of the Warren County Democratic Committee, and I'm just pleased to be with you all.
Thank you. Stephen?
Sorry about that. I had to unmute myself. My name's Steve Kurtz. I'm on the Virginia Republican State Central Committee, former chairman of the Warren County Republican Committee.
Good. Welcome, everyone. What we're going to do is have a formal presentation with some slides, and each of the presenters are going to cover certain areas. And again, if you have any questions, please use your comment. So you're going to first address registering to vote.
Okay, so if you haven't registered to vote, of course, the deadline is October 13th, 2020. And what's really important is if you've moved since the last time you voted, you want to double check your registration. And so you need to go to the website for the elections, Board of Elections, or you can go straight to iwillvote.com and check on your registration there.
And the requirements when you register to vote?
The registration requirement is that you've got to be a resident of Virginia. It doesn't work if you have a summer home in Virginia and you live down in North Carolina the rest of the time. If you're registered to vote in North Carolina and you're going to vote in North Carolina, you can't vote in Virginia too, just by coming up the pike and doing that. You got to be 18 at least, or a person who is going to be 18 years old as of the next general election, November 3rd. And of course, you've got to be a US citizen. You should not have been declared mentally incompetent by a court of law. And if you have been convicted of a felony, your right to vote must have been restored. And we do have some information on the next slide if you want to share with relatives or acquaintances or people in your congregation who have been have had a felony conviction, that there is a portal here. It is www.restorevirginia.gov. And that's really important for people to feel that they can rejoin the community. We believe that everybody who has done their time and fulfilled their requirements ought to be able to vote.
And where to register to vote?
The citizen portal is at www.electionsvirginia.gov, citizen portal. You can also go to the local voter registration office right here on 15th Street. I believe it's 1465. It's right up where the social services offices are on 15th Street. You just drive up to the 415. I think I don't actually have the printout of that location here, unfortunately. Let me see. Yes, I do. 465, I did remember. West 15th Street, it's Suite 800. So when you drive into as you enter the facility, basically an old school, you stay to the right and follow the signs. There's plenty of parking right beside the office. So if you're hobbling around with bad knees, you can get in pretty easily. There's even parking for folks who need to be helped out in getting some assistance from the registrar's office. You also can go to the public library. I believe Samuel's Public Library has that up and going. Am I not correct?
You are correct. We have public computers available to use, but if you're not able to come in, it is on our website, samuelslibrary.net, under the Community Links tab. You are able to access the website, and you can get registered here at the library.
You also can do it at the Department of Motor Vehicle offices, but that's been a little bit dicey. We had some people who moved here recently, oh gosh, earlier in the summer, and they just couldn't get in to get their new driver's licenses. They had to make an appointment. And so we had to tell them to go down to the registrar's office before the opportunity faded for them, and they were able to register that way. So there are also some voter registration drives that go on, and you'll see those posted on social media and on Warren County public sites. So again, here's your portal, www.elections.virginia.gov. And there is also a Virginia Voter Protection Hotline where you can get assistance. If you have friends who don't speak English as the first language, there is a great website. There's several languages, including Spanish, Vietnamese. There, we have lots of Asian folks who don't speak English as a first language. So if they're citizens and they have are now full U.S. citizens, they should be able to get the help they need in order to register to vote and be a part of the community.
Thank you, Ree. And as you can see on the presentation, you can register to vote. You can also check your registration status, which I did do before I voted, just to make sure nothing had happened to my status. So the site is a really useful site for all phases of voting.
And that's a great thing, because Tom just checked that site again, and I tracked my ballot too. Our absentee ballot has already been received. We mailed it on Sunday, and it's there, logged in.
Great. Thank you. The next part of the presentation will talk about early voting, which is new in Virginia, and Steve agreed to cover some of these details.
Yes, early voting this year started at September 18th at the Warren County Voter Registrar's Office, 465 West 15th Street, Suite 800, from Royal, Virginia. Voting hours are from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, and the last 2 Saturdays in October, the October 24th and the 31st, from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on those 2 Saturdays.
And
yes.
just to mention, I personally went and voted there this week, and it was easy and safe and efficient, and so they had all sorts of protections there to make sure it was a safe place to vote.
Yes, I went and voted September 18th when it opened. I was there around 10 o'clock in the morning. Carol Tobin, our registrar, had everything set up. Everything looked great, and then they had a limitation of 10 people in the voting room at one time, which is good, and they were practicing their social distancing. So yeah, everything's working good at our local registrars and our early voting location.
And the requirements for voting in person when you arrive there, what do you need?
You will need a form of ID. It does not have to be a photo ID. It can be anything, any type of government issued ID, or even like a electric bill or anything like that, to prove who you are.
And if you don't have an ID with you, can you explain the provisional ballot that you'll be offered?
Yes, a provisional ballot is a ballot that is set aside out of the vote totals, And what happens with a provisional ballot, if you don't have an ID, they will give you a provisional ballot, and the provisional ballot will only be counted or will only be gone after if the amount of the election difference is less than the amount of provisional votes. If the amount of provisional votes is less than the amount of difference in votes, they won't even count the provisional votes. But if the amount of provisional votes is less than the difference, or excuse me, more than the difference, then they will go through those, and they give you an amount of time. I think it's 3 days or maybe even 5 days, depending, that they will allow you to rectify your ballot and go down to the registrars and provide an ID. I'm pretty sure you can provide an ID if you took a picture of it or emailed a copy of it to the registrar. I believe that's good enough to go ahead and get your provisional ballot counted if needed.
Terrific. And there is accessibility. I've noticed when I went in and voted there's tables that you can sit at if you can't stand. There's also the ability to vote curbside if you call the registrar's office ahead of time. So all accommodations are being made for being able to vote early in person. These are the acceptable forms of IDs. Anything, Steve, you would add to that?
No, I think they've got pretty much everything covered there. There are, like on the bottom one where it says any current utility bill, bank statement, government check, paycheck, or other government document with your name and address. So that could be numerous things besides that. They just want to confirm that you are the person that's coming there to vote. These are also for the absentee ballots as well. You have to provide an ID in order to get your absentee ballot.
And then on November 3rd,
November, where are we?
on November 3rd on Election Day, the polls will be open from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. One thing that we've been told is that all election workers will be required to wear masks inside the polling area. There'll be screens for social distancing, and there is, again, accommodations at all the different polling areas upon request. There's usually a bell to ring outside the polling area if you have mobility impairments and you can't get into the polls. Anything, Steve, you would add about Election Day itself if people are concerned about going to the polls?
Well, from what we're hearing, the majority of votes will be cast on the early voting stages. And November 3rd, we're hoping to avoid a lot of lines and a lot of people congregating in the same area. The polling locations will be set up similar to the current early voting location they have at the registrar. So I do expect it's not going to be as quick as it would on a regular voting day. But the good thing about it is we have early voting this year, and that those lines will be a lot smaller this year.
Before we move on to absentee ballots, Rea or Tom, do you have anything to add to voting in person that we haven't covered?
It's not there. I'll support it, Jane. I get off Amazon.
I thought Steve did a good job of covering all of that.
Great. So Tom, you're going to talk a little bit about the absentee voting process.
Before I do so, I want to thank you, Sharon, for pulling this meeting together. And I also want to greet all my fellow voters. And it's nice to meet you all by Zoom. Last year, I tried to vote absentee, and I was told you needed an excuse, and it better be a good one. This year, you do not have to do that. There are no Due to changes in the law, there's no need to provide an excuse to vote absentee. Next slide, Sharon.
Yes.
How do I get an absentee mail-in voting? You can go down and request one of the registrar's office, or you can go on the citizen portal that I think Ree referred to earlier. You can basically do the whole process on that portal. You can find out what your registration status is. You can submit an application for your registration, and that will be sent to the registrar's office, and after they review it, it will go back on the portal and it will tell you it's been received. If there is a problem with your application for absentee voting by mail, the registrar's office will call you by phone or send you a letter and basically say, can you change this? One person didn't put the 4 digits of their the social security number, and they were called by the registrar and said, let's fix this, and then we can send you your ballot. The last day to request an absentee ballot is October 23rd at 5 p.m. So if you're going to vote absentee, you have to do it by that time.
And when you're completing absentee ballots, some tips and things to be sure you do?
The 2 tips I'd offer is, number 1, read the small print, and secondly, do it early. Check there's a process that you can walk through when you're doing an absentee by mail voting. You take the thing out of the envelope, a witness shows that you open the inner envelope, then you mark your ballot, and the outer envelope is signed by you and by a witness, and then you can send that in. If it's dangerous for you or you perceive it to be dangerous to your health, to have to go find a neighbor, you live by yourself, to try to get a witness, then it's not required. And when you, if you do make a mistake on that, there's also a process, they call it curing the ballot. The registrar's office will let you know. They'll let you know if there's a problem with the outer envelope or with, and they'll give you an opportunity to cure that. That can be done, process needs to be done by November the 6th, which is the Friday after the Tuesday election, by noontime. If that's done, your ballot's fine. You have to remember that there's several envelopes. There's an envelope that all this material comes in. There's an envelope that you're going to send your ballot back, and then there's the envelope that contains the ballot. Go through the process step by step, and you shouldn't have any difficulty with that. For some first-time voters who register through the mail, they have to produce an ID because they're new to the process and they're new to the county. So that has to be sure that that's done.
And that's just simply a copy of those same IDs that we talked about if you were voting in person.
Correct, yes.
And then deadlines for mail-in ballots and how you can deliver them?
You can hand deliver your mail-in ballot to the registrar's office. You can place it in the drop box, which is there. The drop box is quite secure. It looks like you need a stick of dynamite to get it open. And only people that work, the registrar or people who work with her will be able to access that. They'll be accessed on a daily basis. Mail deadlines, when you send in your absentee ballot by mail, it has to be postmarked on November the 3rd and received by the registrar's office. It can be received by the registrars until noon on November 6th. But again, I would emphasize, if you're going to vote absentee by mail, do it soon. The sooner you do it, the more confidence you can have that you're not going to run into those deadlines. If you decide to hand deliver your ballot, you must do so before 7 p.m. on election day, just as if you went to one of the polls. If you get to the polls on election day, you say, gee, I have this absentee ballot, I filled it out, I just didn't get to the post office. You can take it to your polling place, you can place it in a drop box at the polling place. There are other problems. You might go in and you say, I lost my ballot. If you do that, you'll be given a provisional ballot. And once the registrar's office confirms that you haven't voted by mail, you can vote provisionally on election day. Okay, all right. So there's one answer to provisional ballots. All right. If you have an absentee ballot but decide you'd rather vote on election day, yes, you can do that. You can bring your absentee ballot to the polls. They'll exchange it for a regular ballot, and if you fail to bring your absentee ballot polling place, you can vote as a provisional ballot. So you get there, you have your absentee ballot, you want to go in and vote as you used to do or normally did, you can do that. They take one ballot, give you another. If you don't bring the absentee ballot with you and say, gee, you know, I lost it or something like that, you'll be allowed to vote provisionally.
And Tom, that also applies to if I want to do early voting and I suddenly have an absentee ballot at home. If I haven't filled it out, I can also go to the registrar's office before election day and give them the blank.
You turn that in, and they'll just basically put that in a special place where ballots that have been turned in go, and then you'll be allowed to vote absentee as you would normally at the registrar's office. Or most likely, if you have that situation, you're going to go in and vote absentee in person right there at the office.
Right. And one thing to be aware of, if you get your absentee ballot, there's one precinct, Tom, you were mentioning, that people should really look at their ballots to make sure that they got the right ballot if they're city versus county.
Yeah, this is a glitch in the system this year. It may have happened previous years, but we have two precincts in the county, South River at Skyline High School and Happy Creek at Warren County High School, that include parts of the town and parts of people who live outside the town limits in the county. So we have a neighbor who comes down and says, I got my ballot. I asked for an absentee ballot, I got it, but it's the wrong ballot because I can't vote for town council candidates because I don't live in the town. When that happens, the registrar's office is in the process of identifying who got those kind of ballots. They're asking people to bring them into the registrar's office, and they'll basically address the problem there. Why did that happen? It happened because there was a very large volume of absentee ballots requested, and this is the largest, because of what Steve said earlier about people voting absentee and early. They've kind of been very difficult for them, you know, to organize all the volunteers to make sure. But even on a good day, those split precincts cause some confusion and problems.
So in summary, if you get an absentee ballot and you look at it and you live in the county and you see candidates for the mayor's office, call the registrar's office. And conversely, if you live in town and your ballot doesn't include candidates for the mayor's office and other things, again, call the registrar's office. They've been wonderful with any questions that people have. They've been doing an incredible job to make sure that our votes are safe, counted, and secure this year.
Well, we're blessed to have a very good registrar, and Carol Tobin, and she just does a terrific job. And she has a lot to do this year.
So a couple of different things, just to recap important deadlines that are coming up. The last day to register to vote is Tuesday, October 13th. The last day to request an absentee ballot is Friday, October 23rd, but we recommend doing it way in advance of that. The last day of early voting is Saturday, October 31st at 5 p.m. The last day to return absentee ballots, they must be postmarked by Tuesday, November 3rd, but they need to arrive at the registrar's office by that Friday, November the 6th at noon. And if they don't arrive by noon on the 6th, they cannot be counted. That's why we're urging people, if you're using the mail system, to be able to do it early or to hand deliver those ballots either to the registrar's office or on election day to your polling place. Again, hand delivery of absentee ballots can happen before 7 p.m. on election day the 3rd or at a polling place. So those are really important deadlines for everybody to keep in mind as we go through the process. The resources, again, to register to vote, to check your registration, to find your polling place, or to apply for an absentee ballot by mail, you can do all of that on the Citizens portal. And as early in the library mentioned, those links are also on Samuel's Public Library. There's the voter protection hotline. And on the right-hand side, it shows the tracking, if you do have an absentee ballot, how it will be tracked and scanned through the system so that you can make sure that your vote has been counted. Local resources, there are on the ballot, in addition to the national election, we have for the people in town, there are a number of town elections, and there are 3 constitutional amendments. And rather than get into a discussion on those constitutional amendments, if you want more information about candidates or those amendments or help with your ballot, you can contact the Republican committee, the Democratic committee, and there's the registrar's office too. There are sample ballots that are available online, both through the Virginia resource site and from Samuel's Public Library. So I'm going to turn this back over to our panelists for any thoughts and also open up for questions to everyone. Before we end, Tom, any final thoughts about the importance of voting and what voting means to you?
Well, this is a very critical year for all of us. It's very important to vote. I like to say that people gave their lives so we could vote, and so we have a moral obligation, I believe, to exercise our rights in this case. I think we've pretty much covered the landscape here tonight. So I'll leave it at that for the moment.
Great. Steve?
I want to thank Sharon for putting this together. I really do appreciate it, especially in the times when people are not being able to get out like they used to be able to, that they can get online and get this resource and get their questions answered before they go to vote, because we don't want there's a lot of questions this year. This is a different type of voting with the early voting and with COVID. So, and I just encourage everybody to get out there and vote for their candidate.
Thank you. Ree?
Yeah, I just want to emphasize 2 things. Look at it as we've got options. But if you're going to do vote by mail, because you really are a little bit leery about showing up in person, absentee voting and procrastination do not go together. So be sure that you act quickly to order your ballot online. You go to the Virginia registration portal or call the Warren County Registrar's office as quickly as possible, and then turn around. Don't wait. You get it in the mail. Don't lay it on the table. Let it get buried like I do. Get it out, read the directions carefully, and get it filled out and back in the mail as quickly as possible. The deadline for mailing is actually for asking for a ballot and being assured that you're going to get it, because there are a lot of steps you've got to go through to get it. Is really try to get it in, your request in by October the 1st. That's the route you want to take. And then turn around and get it back in the mail as quickly as possible. Waiting till October 23 to order a ballot is going to be pushing it awfully close when you look at that information about what the post office is recommending. 2 to 9 days for turnaround is a little bit scary. So don't procrastinate.
I would just add a couple of points. Number one, we want to do two things. We want to ensure the safety and the security of our ballot. We want to make sure our ballot is counted, and we want to do it in a way that's safe for our personal health. And I think we have a variety of options, and the reason we have those is to secure those two basic objectives.
One more piece, don't forget the envelope. You can't just take your ballot, your bare ballot back to the registrar. You need the envelopes that go to, because that's how they track it. Okay, does that help?
The barcode, yes. Any questions from those of you that are in attendance? Everybody feel good about voting? And for those of you that know me, I have literally not been in many buildings since March, and I went and I got satisfaction of watching that ballot be scanned and seeing the green light come on Monday. And I can say that it was safe. Everybody was very courteous. You know, it was a great feeling of knowing that I had done what my parents cherished so much in their life. So we really do want to encourage everybody to vote. Everybody will that is our responsibility to make sure our votes get counted this year. And our county is doing an incredible job at making sure that it is safe and secure. You know, I have confidence in whatever the outcome is, that it's being done well and fairly in this county. And it's now up to all of us to get out and vote and encourage those around us to also do the process, because steps are being taken to make sure that we will be safe and secure. So we appreciate everybody's time. Thank you to our panelists for joining us. As I said, this will be recorded and it will be on the library's YouTube site. If you have any questions, please refer to the resources that we have, and just, you know, get out and vote and encourage everyone to do it. So thank you, everybody, for joining.
Sharon, before you go, I want to say that Christine Rydell, who's on the call with us, did a great job of putting together some questions and answers. If you have a question, and sometimes there are really kind of left field questions, but they have answers, you can stop by the Democratic office on East Main Street, and Christine or I could to help you walk through those things. So please reach out to us if you need assistance.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody, for your time.
Thanks for putting this together.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Sharon.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing this.
Night.
Good night, everyone.
Right.
Good night.